Got my OSCP, but can't land a junior pen tester job in France. Is this normal? So we're going to take a look at this Reddit post here. Unfortunately, from what I've seen so far, this seems to be quite normal worldwide in the current job market. And over the last year, I've gotten dozens of DMs from you guys expressing this issue. I'll put some of those DMs on the screen right now just as proof. But if you know anything about me, you'll know that I'm not a doom and gloom guy. So what can we actually do about this issue so that we can get into this field in any job market? Hello, my name is Ryan from Elevate Cyber, and I am a professional pen tester and cybersecurity mentor with over a decade of experience. Let's get right into this post here. All right, so we'll dive into this post here. I've been working in computer networks for about 6 years, earning a 2-year technical degree in France, and I recently decided to transition into cybersecurity a few months ago, passed the OSCP Plus. And by the way, this is from 4 months ago, so this is pretty recent. This is pretty up to date. He even references OSCP Plus, which is the current form of OSCP. Once you get the cert nowadays, you have OSCP Plus for a certain time duration, and then it gets downgraded just to the regular baseline OSCP. With a perfect score of 100 out of 100. However, I have not been able to land a junior pen tester job since then. So this has been a few months job search. There's more data that I'd be interested to see from this guy. I don't think he provides it. Like, how many jobs did he apply to? Where was he applying to these jobs on, and things like that. Anyhow, he says, I keep getting rejected by companies that only seem to hire graduates with a 5-year engineering degree. Now, we need to take that part with a grain of salt, because probably the reason that he's saying that is because all he can see from his perspective is he is getting rejected from the jobs that he's applying to, and he's probably basing that off the job description, saying like where it has like the ridiculous requirements. If you haven't been watching this channel for a while, just understand that in cybersecurity, it's so rare that you will apply to a job or even come across a job posting, for that matter, as ridiculous as it sounds, that you meet the requirements for, or even like half the requirements. I personally have been recommended by recruiters, reached out to by recruiters many times in my career. Never once did those recruiters even reach out to recommend me for a job that I met the qualifications for. And moreover, I've never talked to anyone in this field that has met the job requirements for any of these postings. I'm sure those people exist out there, like the people that are uber overqualified and stuff. A lot of these things that you see, even if it says requirement, it's really just a nice to have at the end of the day. And I mean, there's many reasons for this. Like, some of it stems from like a disconnect between like the hiring managers, HR team, and different stakeholders like that. But just understand that a lot of the requirements are not actually requirements. But that's probably why he's saying this. Let's keep going here. I'm on the verge of going back to basic network administration, but this whole situation is really frustrating. I'm quite active on RootMe, Hack the Box. I've been interested in cybersecurity since high school. I thought passing the OSCP would at least open some doors for me. Is this normal, or could there be an issue with my CV or career path? Well, to be honest, there could be an issue with the CV. We don't really know that. But what I will say is everything that he's saying here is not something too out of the ordinary. Let me take a step back. It is crazy, right? It is insane that like this guy has OSCP. He's been doing Hack the Box. He's been doing all these things. On paper, it is crazy. I will level with you guys. I know you guys are gonna say that in the comments. But what I mean by it is it's not crazy based on what I've heard from you guys, right? Like, I showed you those screenshots earlier in the video of all the people, and that was only a fraction of the people that reached out to me on these different platforms like Instagram and stuff like that, and expressed like, hey, I have my OSCP and I can't land an interview. What's going on here? And these people were from all over the world, Europe, America, I believe India as well, like all over the place. And yeah, this seems to be a worldwide issue that a lot of people are having. But look, the job market has shifted. Like, there was a time where having OSCP, like, you would at least get an interview. Like, at least you would get an opportunity and an interview. The market has shifted, honestly. And you guys get so mad when I say this, right? But this is what I'm talking about when I say things that, like, you know, OSCP is really not enough on its own. Hack the Box is not enough on its own. No, you guys really need to listen to the full sentence, on its own, right? I do recommend it. I do recommend it as a supplement, but there's more elements to getting the job than just what these platforms can provide. And you can feel a certain type of way about this. You can be angry in the comments, but this is the reality that we're seeing. I want to make you guys more aware of this so that we can come up with a strategy on how to navigate this. So let's jump into that. So the very first thing is we need to focus on all the skills that are required for the job and not just fixate on the ones required for OSCP, or honestly, whatever cert it is you're going for that matter, because this applies to pretty much all the certs out there. Even though some of these are great, and look, OSCP is a solid training, there's still going to be deficiencies if you're relying on it solely. So we need to first know what those are. We need to identify those, and we want to make sure that we fill those gaps. So what are those gaps? Well, number one gap is that if you only rely on OSCP, the problem you're going to run into is you are going to only be focused on remote code execution. So only RCE, remote code execution. So what that looks like is, getting the initial shell, getting the root shell and stuff like that. This is a lot different than what you would be doing on an actual pen test for the reason that the goal is different. So with OSCP, this is the holy grail, getting RCE and then escalating your privileges to root or administrator or full access. If you can find that on a pen test, that's great. But most of the time, that's not going to be the case. But also, that's only a fraction of what you're actually being hired to do as a pen tester. And I'll cover red teaming in a second because that's a little bit different case as well. For pen testing, the objective is to find and report as many vulnerabilities as possible, including ones that might not have anything to do with remote code execution. So for example, it could be something super impactful. Like you might find that, hey, this website here has like a logic flaw that the developers did not foresee that allows you to access some sensitive data over here that you shouldn't have access to. Maybe the API is leaking some sensitive information like social security numbers, or maybe some medical records, stuff like that. Like the company would consider very critical because of HIPAA and different requirements and stuff like that. They would definitely want to know about that issue, but you probably won't see this. At least I haven't seen this on a capture the flag. I haven't seen it on these hands-on certifications because it doesn't lead to this. It doesn't lead to remote code execution. So you want to start training yourself when you're doing these CTFs, or even if you're designing your own labs or whatever, you want to get in the mindset of not disqualifying these other vulnerabilities that might not be present on CTFs. You still need to know how to identify these so that you can report them to the company when you're actually on the job. So that's the first thing. Don't just rely on looking for remote code execution vulnerabilities. The second thing is sometimes it's best to not even go for root access. This is more so the case in a red team scenario, okay? So if you're doing red teaming, draw a little evil guy here, right? If you're doing red teaming, then you are trying to emulate an adversary. You're trying to pose as an advanced persistent threat actor, as a hacking group. The whole purpose of a red team engagement is the company that is employing the red team, they want to know if they got targeted by this hacking group, how prepared would they be? How solid are their defenses? You don't necessarily care about getting code execution per se, or even getting domain admin or root access or whatever. Those things are just a means to an end. Your true objective as a red teamer is whatever the objective of the APT is that you're emulating. So depending on what that is, you might be able to achieve that objective without even getting domain admin. In that case, it's better to do that. And I've been in many red team scenarios where we were able to achieve our objective without even getting domain admin. And even though we saw a pathway to do that, we easily could, we actually opted not to because that is less guarded, right? Like the domain admin is going to have a lot more eyes on it, right? It's going to be a higher tier. It's a more critical asset. So that means that if we were to go and pursue domain admin, the chance it would be discovered would go up dramatically. But if we use these lower privileged accounts, we can still achieve the objective of our red team engagement without even having to touch these assets that all of the spotlight is on. You just do that. So it's not necessarily always that you want the root access even. Have you ever considered that? Now, another downside to OSCP and only relying on that is that OSCP, while it does encompass a lot of different areas in cybersecurity, and they're adding stuff like cloud and different things like that, primarily you're kind of approaching everything from the perspective of an internal assessment. And the thing about internals is they are mostly reserved for more seasoned testers. So these internals, what I mean by an internal is like, hey, this is going to be the scenario on the exam, by the way, and I'm not really leaking any information by saying this. This is in their public information. You're going to get a subnet, right? You're going to get a network, right? Subnet, I'm just going to come up with a subnet here, and they're going to be like, hey, any IP in this subnet is in scope. So there might be a bunch of servers. I think there's like, 5 or 6 servers on the exam. You're turned loose and you try to compromise them all, right? Compromise everything, show that you fully own the environment, write up your report, and earned the certification, right? Awesome. This is my little medallion here, basically. that is the objective on the OSCP, right? But these internal assessments where you have like a full subnet, you're probably not, you're almost guaranteed, unless you're like a one-man shop or something, you're pretty much guaranteed not to be doing that on your first job as a pen tester. I mean, you might not even be doing it on your second job. Usually it's the more senior pen testers that are doing these internals where you have a whole network where they turn you loose. Now, of course, your mileage may vary. Maybe you do, but it's pretty rare. What's a lot more likely is you probably be running some vulnerability scanners and validating the findings. So it'll come back and say, like, I don't know, maybe there's SQL injection, XSS, whatever. And then you go and validate that to see, okay, here's what the scanner said. Is it a false positive or is it legitimate? And you'll probably be doing a lot more AppSec as well. That's a lot more common in the beginning, specifically on the web side, right? Because all these companies, they're almost always behind on testing out their web applications. So they'll have tons of websites that they're deploying all the time, especially with CI/CD pipelines, continuous development and integration. They're constantly pushing code out to these websites, and that code needs to be tested, make sure everything's secure. So they're gonna have a huge queue, a huge backlog of all of these web applications that need to be tested. And when you get these assessments, the thing is, it's going to be different than an internal assessment. So instead of being given that full subnet like we were looking at earlier, they're just going to give you a URL, right? You're just going to get the URL of the website, and it's like, hey, anything in here is in scope in this particular URL or whatever. So it's going to be a lot more limited. So think about like doing one box on OSCP. That's more so what it's going to be like, rather than like a whole entire subnet. And even still, those applications are going to be a lot different than what you're going to encounter on OSCP. So it makes sense to focus more on web or AppSec or something like that, because that's where there's going to be more jobs, and more likely that you're going to be doing that as your first job early on. Later, when you become more senior, like I said, you can probably dive into more internals. That's what my experience has been personally, and that's also been the experience of most everyone that I've talked to in the field. But beyond that, right, how else can we overcome these challenges here? Well, I would recommend highly to look for ways to create your own experience. You need to be proactive, right? Because look, OSCP, these certifications are great, but let's not kid ourselves here. They're not real experience, and employers know they're not real experience. I'm still seeing like this huge shift within the last couple of years where the employers are highly prioritizing people that have actual work experience in this field. There's the chicken and the egg problem. Look, I totally get that. That's something that I've been able to help a lot of people with by providing freelance contracts and things like that. There's other solutions to this problem too. So let's try to come up with a creative solution here as well, right? So let's say you're in that scenario where it's like, I don't have any experience and they won't hire me because I don't have experience, right? Very common problem. One way that I utilized to address this early on in my career was I took a proactive approach to solve this. So I said, okay, well, I know a lot of people that are software developers at my college. I was in college at the time. They're building applications, and I can test those applications. I can get their permission to test those applications and provide a free pen testing service. And although it's not technically the same as, testing a huge company's front, internet facing website or whatever, right? It's still experience. Now, I wasn't smart enough to know that right away. I had to learn that the hard way. I didn't put that on my resume because I was like, oh, that doesn't really count. That might be what's going through your head when you hear this suggestion. Oh, do that, right? You might be like, oh, well, if I'm not getting paid and it's just some like, computer science students application, that doesn't really count. I shouldn't put that on my resume. That's lying or whatever. It's like, no, I thought that way. I didn't put it on my resume in the beginning. I didn't put it on my resume until like halfway through my career, midway through my career. And when I did that, I felt like such an idiot all this time, because every single recruiter, multiple recruiters told me like, wow, they specifically called that, I really love how you have this on here. It shows you're being proactive. You found a creative way to make your own experience. That go-getter attitude, that's the type of candidate that we're looking for. I was like, well, I made a huge mistake here. So hopefully you guys don't make the same mistake. Put it on your resume, do this, take it serious, and this will actually go a really long way to kind of solve this problem. The other thing though that will still be missing, even if we do all of these things, is another critical thing, in that we will be missing out on the actual skill set to write these pen test reports. I've seen the comments that you guys write down. Look, and it's entertaining. You guys say like, oh man, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. These certifications, they require you to write a report. Yeah, I know that. I'm fully aware of that. I've gotten these certs myself. But what I will say, and this is what I think a lot of people in the field don't realize, or people that are not in the field, they don't realize this, is that these reports for like OSCP and CRTP, and I love these certs. Don't get me wrong. I make content on them all the time. These reports are is real world. Like, not even close. If you just do it as a walkthrough, they'll probably, these companies will still pass you. And even the templates and stuff they give out, some of them have better templates than others, but none of them are real world. And I know this because I've seen thousands of these reports in my career. I've been a pen tester all my entire career. And here's the main way they differ, okay? When you're talking about a report for these different certifications, let's go off of OSCP, right? The main difference is that these are more focused on walkthrough. It's I did this, I did this, I did this. It's you're teaching other hackers how to hack the server. That's what these reports are. They're more so walk. And anytime you go, a lot of times if you try to do research and learn this stuff on your own online by reading blog posts and stuff like that, this is the style of reporting they're going to teach you, how to do a walkthrough. The problem with this for an actual report is, in the walkthrough scenario, this is the only target audience. It's just other hackers. But think about it. Who are we writing the report for as a pen tester? Well, there's many stakeholders. So it's not just the hackers. The hackers are part of it, sure, but a very small part of it. Primarily, we want to write for the executives, the people in the company. I'll try to draw a tie here. Suit and tie, right? The people in the company. This guy is unhappy because he's an executive, right? They didn't hit their quota this year. It's a low quarter, these executives, they're not as technical, right? I don't know the technical jargon. I just need to know what was the outcome and why should I care, right? So we need to be able to write to this non-technical audience. We also need to write to the technical people, and we'll just draw this guy. He's got glasses because he's a technical nerd, right? These are the people in charge of fixing the issue. And these people, they need to know what is the issue with the technical details that they require to be able to fix the issue, right? Now, you don't have to fully architect a solution for them, but you need to at least be thorough in saying, at a technical level, what the issue is so that they can understand, and then they can go and remediate it, right? And then you have the other hackers, of course, right? That way, when this guy goes and fixes the issue, they submit a retest, and then another security professional, maybe you, maybe someone else on your team that might get assigned it from the queue, they need to know, okay, what did you do in your testing so that they can try and reproduce the issue, see if it was fixed. Now, if you apply all these things, then that should really help solidify this. You pair a certification with all the things that I mentioned here to fill in those deficiencies so that you're actually positioning yourself as a qualified candidate, someone that's a professional in the field, not just a cert collector or a theory junkie, right? And so if you want some additional help on the report side, I know this can be difficult because it's well, cool, but if all of the reports out there are basically in that walkthrough format, how do I know what an actual good pen test report looks like? Well, I made a video recently on this exact thing. So check the video on the end screen right now that you see pop up on the screen, where I will not only break down exactly how to write a commercial grade pen test report, but also I'll provide you with a template that you can use to have a solid report going forward. So check out that video right now. And if you want some additional help with all this stuff to really fast track yourself, go down to the description below and book a call.